All right, so today we are going to run through Canada's federal system of governing. We are a constitutional monarchy, though we use generally we're a democracy in the general sense of the word. But if you're ever asked, we are actually a constitutional monarchy. So that does mean there is going to be a monarch somewhere in the system that I'm about to describe. But let's jump right into it. All right. So our system, our constitutional monarchy, in Canada, there are 3 levels of government. Let's start with that. Now, there's a difference between levels of government, between levels of government and branches of government. Those are 2 different things. So levels of government would be your municipal, provincial, and federal. Those are our levels of government. So municipal would be your city government, and your city government is responsible for roads within the city, road cleaning, that's garbage pickup. Those are bylaws, like you have to pick up after your dogs, you have to keep dogs on a leash in areas, no smoking in public areas, all those like smaller bylaws, etc. And primarily, so you remember, for other curricular outcomes, municipal governments get a lot of their money through tax. All governments get their money through tax, but theirs specifically is property tax. So anytime that a company is paying property tax within a city limit, that is going towards your municipal government. Now, the provincial government, they're responsible primarily, the biggest ones, education and healthcare. Those are the most significant areas where the provincial government is responsible for. And they get their tax money through royalties. So the selling of lumber, or in Canada, or in Alberta specifically, oil and gas reserves. We get Albertans get a percentage of every barrel of oil that is sold, et cetera, because it is ideally our oil, so we should get part of that revenue. So those are different ways that we get our taxes, as well as income tax. Income tax is also a large one. There is a tax on everyone's income who works in Alberta. Finally, federal level, that's national, that is Canada-wide, right? That's Canada-wide. And the primary way that taxes are generated is through income tax as well. So there's a federal income tax and there's a provincial income tax. You pay tax twice on everything you make, as well as through trade. There's some money made through trade, etc. So those are our 3 levels of government. Now, what we're talking about in the federal, in this unit, is we're talking about branches of government. We're talking about the federal government. We're talking about the federal government and its structure. And it is structured in 3 equally important groups, and those we call the 3 branches of government. 3 branches of government. And again, ideally, these 3 branches of government are supposed to hold each other accountable, so no one of them has more or too much power over the other 2. And they're supposed to balance each other. So there are 3 branches of government. There's 3 branches of government. There is the legislative branch. Now, the legislative branch, the root word there is to legislate. Anytime you see the word to legislate, it is to make laws. So their job is to make the laws. To make the law. They're the ones who actually put ideas into law. They're the ones who take a member of parliament's concept and actually make it into a law of the land, which then has to be followed and carried out, etc. So they make the law. Then you have the judicial branch, and they're the ones who interpret the laws. Again, the root word there is judge. So these are judges, and they are the ones who interpret the law. Now, what that means is that while this group here is making laws, sometimes they need interpreting. For example, when this group here made laws regarding marriage, etc., they didn't quite define what marriage was because everybody knew what marriage was. Marriage was between one woman and one man. But as time has gone on, the judicial branch has had to make a decision about what does marriage, how is marriage actually defined? Is it just between a man and a woman, or can it be between two men, two women, multiple men, multiple women? Like, how do we define marriage? Also, this group here, the legislative branch, comes up with laws such as we have freedom of expression. You can express yourself. Well, what if I want to express myself through the back of my hand to someone's face? Is that the judicial branch is the one who interprets what does it mean to express oneself? What did the legislative branch intend when they actually said express yourself? Mobility rights. You have the right to, this group here, again, the legislative branch says that you have the right to be mobile, to go where you want in Canada. Well, to go where you want, does that mean I can cross into any property I want? Does that mean I can enter any building I want? Does it mean I can walk onto private property or even government property, but is some government property not to be walked upon? Can my right to go wherever I want mean I don't have to wear a hard hat onto a construction site because I'm allowed to go onto a construction site? So you can't stop me and you can't force me to wear certain articles of safety equipment. During the pandemic, this has become a sticking point, right? Like, can the government force me to wear a mask and force me to stay within my province? And I can't enter government buildings without a mask. Well, I have mobility rights. Why not? I can't go to other provinces. Why not? I have mobility rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the judicial branch who interprets these laws and actually defines them. The last of these branches is the executive branch. Now, the executive branch, keyword there are executives. If you've ever seen a movie or read a book or just had a conversation with someone and someone talked about the executives of a company, they're talking about the people in charge. So the people in charge, the executives are the people in charge, and they actually run the country. This is the group that actually runs the country. They carry out the law. So again, legislative branch, they're the ones making the laws. This is the group that actually moves them forward, actually carries them out. Now, what does that mean? That means that, example here, let's say the legislative branch, they make a law about train safety. So, trains that have dangerous chemicals can't go through cities or towns. So an accident happened, and this is actually a true story. 10 odd years ago, a train was traveling through a town or city in Quebec, and there was an accident and it spilled its contents onto the roadway. And of course, because it was actually a populated center, it was a town, the entire town had to be evacuated, and there was concern about long-term health of the community. And of course, everybody who had their houses there weren't sure if they ever wanted to move back. Is the groundwater now going to be poisoned? And now you can't sell your home because who wants to buy a house in this town where the groundwater might be poisoned? So all these concerns. So the legislative branch listened to the concerns of the citizens and were like, you know what? We don't want this to ever happen again. We're going to make a law about train safety. Excellent. No train that has poisonous or dangerous chemicals can pass through cities or towns anymore. They have to go around them. They have to take the train routes that move around populated centers. Well, it's now that law, once that law passed, it's the executive's job to actually carry it out, to make this train law into reality. So they're the ones who actually, communicate to train companies, etc. So they're the ones who now communicate to train companies, to chemical companies, etc. And they're the ones who actually reroute. They're the ones who demand that those who make the schedules reroute trains, put chemicals in separate train cars from trains or separate trains altogether from cars that are carrying feed, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of stuff had to actually get, just because you make this law, great, you made a great law. Now it actually has to get done in the real world. And that's what the executive branch is responsible for. Okay. Let us start with, you know what? Let's start with the legislative branch, because the legislative branch is the most complex. And I want to make sure that we get through that one. All right, let's use purple. Let's talk about the legislative branch. It is by far the most complex. Under the legislative branch, we actually have two. We actually have two, no, that's okay. We actually have two equal powers that help us. Two equal powers that, what are you drawing? It'd be easier if you held the pencil properly. So we have two equal powers in the legislative branch. Yes, put that top back on.
What?
Thank you. Well, just so we don't lose it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Those two equal powers are the House of Commons, and the Senate. Hello. Now, bit of a quick history. Our government, oh, by the way, Killian, you're gonna have to let go of my neck. It's starting to hurt. Together, we call these Parliament. So if anyone refers to Parliament, or Parliament is going to pass this law, or Parliament is responsible for blah, 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 Parliament refers to the House of Commons and the Senate combined. Now, again, a little bit of history. The House of Commons and the Senate, this system, this parliamentary system, comes from England. England was the one who set it up this way, and we've kind of just adopted it. In England, their Senate is called the House of Lords. And way back when, there was only a House of Lords. There was the king or queen, and then all the lords, and they would make the decisions for everybody. So that's all there was. But then they added the House of Commons. So again, you don't actually have to memorize House of Lords, please don't. But in England, they call it the House of Lords, and they also though have a House of Commons. And in the States, you're going to hear their House of Commons is called Congress. So when we talk about America, if you ever hear them refer to Congress, they are referring to their version of the House of Commons. And they also have a Senate, but theirs is a little different, and we'll get to that. So the House of Commons, whereas the Senate now was the House of Lords, the House of Commons were commoners. The people who represent the House of Commons, the people who sit in the House of Commons, are commoners. And that's where that term comes from. And they are referred to as members of Parliament, MPs, most often referred to as MPs, members of Parliament. And they are elected. They are elected from constituencies or ridings. The word ridings and the word constituency, they literally mean the same thing. There is actually no difference. They are interchangeable. They are synonymous. Constituency, riding mean the same thing. So they are elected from constituencies and ridings throughout Canada. So let's just take Alberta as an example. So Alberta is broken up into a number of imaginary lines, and each of these imaginary squares, in each of these squares is approximately 100,000 citizens, 100,000 cities. Now, it varies. There'll be some that have 90,000 and some that have 150,000, right? So don't get stuck on that. It's approximately 100,000. No, you'll never be asked that on a test. Just have an idea that each of these constituencies is about 100,000 citizens, and they're the ones who elect from their constituency of 100,000. They elect a member of Parliament, and that member of Parliament then goes to Parliament. Let's see if I can draw this. There's little flags fluttering in the wind, little flags fluttering in the wind, right? And so this is Parliament in Ottawa. And they go to Ottawa, they go there. There are 338 members of Parliament. So that means there are, how many constituencies are there then? There are 338 constituencies. Each constituency elects its own member of Parliament to go to Parliament, to go to the House of Commons and speak for their constituents, their constituency, right? Now, I've drawn all these little boxes in Alberta, but in Edmonton here, there'll be a lot of small little boxes, and where Calgary is, there's going to be a lot of small. Why would that be? Why would there be a whole bunch of smaller constituencies and ridings in that area? Because it's more densely populated. Calgary has approximately 1.3 million people, which means it has approximately, if there's 100,000 people in each constituency, and Calgary has 1.3 million people, then it has approximately 13 constituencies, 13 ridings in Calgary, because the math. So hopefully you can understand and see that. All right, so that's who makes up the House of Commons. The Senate, however, sorry, I lost some connection with my iPad for a second. So yes, the Senate is appointed by the Prime Minister, whoever that is at the time being. Now, does that mean that when the Prime Minister gets into power, that all 105, there was 105 last time I checked, these numbers change. Same, so this 338 MPs, but who knows when you're watching this video, whether there's still 338 or if there's more, because as the population changes, obviously that number is going to change. So senators right now, as I'm making this video, there are 105 senators. So does that mean that the Prime Minister, if the Prime Minister is a Liberal, then they just appoint 105 Liberal senators? Not exactly.
Sorry,
because
Dad.
that's okay. So because senators are appointed by the Prime Minister, but they serve till 75 years of age. I know, you have to watch out, Killian.
I caught on my foot.
I know, but you might fall and hurt yourself, right? So be careful. They serve till they're 75 years of age, which means they can't get fired. The senators don't get fired unless they turn 75 or they commit a capital crime. Sure, that is very rare. But unless they commit a capital crime, they serve till they're 75 years old. And there are stories of senators who do almost nothing. They collect a paycheck and they do practically nothing because there's no consequences, or at least that's how they feel. There are no consequences. They can get away with showing up to a bare minimum number of meetings. They can travel the world and come back to Canada a couple times every year to make a vote or whatever the case may be, and they still collect their paycheck of like $120,000 a year. So a lot of people are not amused by this because if, again, let's say you get hired, let's say a senator gets hired at the age of 50, they get a job for 25 years where they can't really get fired unless they commit a capital crime. They just sit, they just keep their job. Nobody can hold them accountable. That's one of the arguments against the Senate. That's one of the arguments that people don't like about the Senate. Whereas members of Parliament, they are elected, as we said, they're elected, and those elections take place every 4 to 5 years. Legally, according to our Constitution, it has to be at least every 5 years that there has to be an election, but usually it's every 4 years. So every 4 years, if a member of Parliament is not doing their job, we kick them out. Or if they are embarrassing themselves, etc., we kick them out. Right? Like if they say things we don't like, or if they don't represent our constituency well, we kick them out and we elect somebody else. Senators, what do? We can't elect a new one. So yeah, so that's the only way they lose their job. So when I say they're appointed by the Prime Minister appoints those who are retiring. So if they turn 75 and a senator leaves, then now the Prime Minister gets to replace that senator with a new one. Obviously, they can also quit their job. So at the age of 70, if they want to spend more time with their grandkids or whatever the case, obviously they can quit at any time, but they can serve until 75 years of age. Now, what was I going to say? Senators are often chosen. They also have to be 30, at least 30 years of age. They're supposed to be wise. They're supposed to be they're called the sober second thought. They're supposed to be the wise ones. See what, because we're talking about the legislative branch of government, and the legislative branch makes laws. Both the House of Commons and the Senate are equally responsible for making laws. Well, the House of Commons has 4 years to make laws and to get things done. They also are very much worried about what voters think. The House of Commons is worried about what voters think, which is a good thing. It sounds like it's a good thing. They should be worried what we think. We are their bosses. They should be very concerned that they are not doing what we want. The Senate doesn't have to worry about what the voters think. And a lot of people, again, they don't like that, but there is an advantage to this. The advantage is, again, sober second thought, not rushed. They have many years and experience. They don't have to be rushed. This group here often feel like they have to be rushed. They got to get things done to show their voters. But sometimes that means that they do rush through bills and laws. Whereas the Senate's going to take their time. They're not going to rush. They're not rushed. They also have the time. They also have the time to, they also don't have pressure, not pressured. So whereas members of parliament may feel pressured by voters to make decisions that are best for their voters, but maybe not best for Canada long term. Well, this group here ideally is not pressured to go with the majority, which is why the Senate also represents minorities. Because this group here, again, the House of Commons worries what the majority thinks. Well, what are the most populated centers in Canada? Toronto, Montreal, Quebec City, Vancouver. Those are the most populated centers. So if Toronto hates oil and gas and wants to just ban all oil and gas drilling, well, you know what? All of Canada's political parties might start leaning that way, because you get a lot of votes, you get a lot of seats if you win Toronto. And if that's what Toronto wants, suddenly a lot of MPs also want that. If all of Quebec and all of Ontario want to take away Indigenous rights, well, a lot of parties are going to be like, that sounds pretty good. Because if you get all of the votes in Quebec and all of the votes in Ontario, you pretty much get all the seats. Like, you're going to get, of the 338 seats, probably 200 of them are located in those two provinces alone, Ontario and Quebec. So the idea is that senators don't have to be bullied by the populated centers. They don't have to feel bullied by Toronto and Quebec. They don't have to be bullied by Ontario and Quebec as provinces. They can do what's best, which is also why senators don't represent 100,000 each. They represent, there is one senator per territory. There's one territory. There is one senator per territory, 6 per prairie province. Since 6 per prairie province, Quebec gets 24. Ontario gets 24. So Ontario gets 24, Quebec gets 24, and the Maritimes, I'm gonna get this wrong. I think New Brunswick gets 6 also, same as like Alberta, and Nova Scotia gets 6, and PEI gets 6, and Newfoundland gets 10. I don't want to write it down because I'm probably going to write. This is not part of the curriculum. It's not that important. But the idea is that because Quebec gets 24 and Ontario gets 24, well, if each territory gets 1, they are getting significantly more Senate representation per person than Quebec or Ontario. So the idea is that senators are supposed to represent minorities and regions. So they're supposed to represent different regions of Canada and minorities. That's the whole concept behind the House of Commons and the Senate. Excellent. Whew, that was a lot. The next two branches, less complex. Let's move on to, who should we do next? Let's do the executive branch. Sorry, I got a child in my lap, so it's hard to write sometimes. So the executive branch. The executive branch, these are the people do, as you recall, they run the day-to-day business of government. They're the ones whose names you're going to know the most. This is more like a hierarchy. So again, pretty quick. At the very top of a constitutional monarchy is the Queen. The Queen is at the very top, and the Queen's representative in Canada is our Governor General. And these two roles are super ceremonial. Pretty much at this point, all the Queen does is put her face on our money. That's all the Queen does. Sometimes she shows up at events. She's now of the age where I don't think she will ever step foot in Canada again. I would be surprised if she ever leaves England again. Maybe to the mainland, but that is a long flight for a woman who is as old as she is. So the Queen's representative, the Governor General, carries out all the duties, the ceremonial duties of the Queen, but they do not play an active role. No active role. They don't do anything. And in fact, okay, you know what, we'll get to it later. Actually, no, let's do it now. The Governor General, how does the Governor General get their job? Well, it's the Queen's representative. So the Queen appoints the Governor General. Yes and no. Really, though, the Prime Minister chooses the Governor General and the Queen just rubber stamps it. The Prime Minister makes a suggestion to the Queen and the Queen nods her head and agrees. In fact, there was a long time ago, there was a governor, not that long ago, actually, it was like 40 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, the Governor General of Canada did actually try to play an active role. The Governor General refused to sign a bill into law because that's one of the Governor General's jobs, which we'll get to later. One of the Governor General's jobs is to sign bills into law, and the Governor General disagreed with the law and refused to sign it. And unless the Governor General actually signs their name at the bottom of that piece of paper, it can't become law. Well, you know what happened? The Prime Minister was angry with the Governor General for not signing it because it passed. Everybody in the House of Commons and the Senate agreed that they wanted it to be a law, but the Governor General was holding it up. So the Prime Minister phoned up the Queen, said, hey, your representative, the Governor General, isn't signing this. Queen said, I'll take care of it. The Queen phoned up the Governor General, told him he was fired, phoned the Prime Minister back and said, who would you like to replace him with? Prime Minister gave the Queen another name. Queen called up that person, said, hey, you're the next Governor General. And you know what that next Governor General did? They signed the bill into law. So they don't play an active role. And if they try to play an active role, they're going to get fired. Their job is to not play an active role. They are, think of the Governor General as the Queen's representative, but kind of like Canada's ambassador, our top ambassador. They go to a lot of parties. They hold a lot of parties. They entertain kings and queens from around the world and prime ministers and leaders. They get to stay in a very nice house and have very nice clothes, and they give very nice speeches and they shake lots of hands. And if you're an amazing teacher, you get the Governor General's Award. If you're an amazing author, you get the Governor General's Award. If you're an amazing engineer, you get a Governor General Award. If you create a beautiful building, then the Governor General will come and tell you how amazing your building is and shake your hand and give you a Governor General's Award. So it's very ceremonial. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the real rules. Who is the most powerful person? Who is the actual most powerful person in Canada? Hopefully you know this. It is the Prime Minister. Whenever you hear the term Prime Minister, for the sake of this unit, you should, it appears that my computer has stopped sharing again. One moment.
Hello. Cuckoo. Hello. Cuckoo. Hello. Cuckoo. Hello. 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 Cuckoo. Cuckoo.
All right. The Prime Minister. Now, whenever, for the sake of this curriculum, whenever you see the term prime minister, think of it as two words, prime minister, the first of the ministers, because below the prime minister are a whole lot of other ministers, a whole lot of cabinet ministers. This is the cabinet. Now, the cabinet is made up of a whole lot. I think Canada has 39 right now, 39 ministers. So these are all ministers. Minister. These are all ministers. And what do these ministers do? Well, there's a minister of defense. There's a minister of agriculture. There's a minister of transportation. So remember our example from way back when, if they wanted to make a law about train safety, it would be the Minister of Transportation who would actually carry that law out, because transportation is highways, planes, trains, and automobiles. So again, if there's going to be a change to train safety, it's the Minister of Transportation who's responsible for contacting the appropriate people to get that moving, to make that law a reality, which is why cabinet ministers get paid significantly more than other MPs, because all of these people are MPs. The Prime Minister is also an MP. The Minister of Defense is also an MP. Okay, sorry. Ministers can also be senators. So they may also be a senator. Cabinet ministers can also be senators. Most of them are MPs. But so all of these people, the Prime Minister is an MP. Currently in 2022, we have Prime Minister, who's our Prime Minister? Justin Trudeau. We have Justin Trudeau as our Prime Minister, and Justin Trudeau has a constituency. He's an MP like every other MP. And his constituency is Rudeau. You know what? I can't recall what his constituency is called, but it's somewhere in Montreal. I think it's in Montreal. So he has a constituency in Montreal, and he's an MP. But how do you become Prime Minister? How do you become Prime Minister? Well, first you get elected as MP, but you are the head of the party that has the most seats. So if your party, the Liberals, let's say, in this case, if the Liberals have the most seats in the House of Commons, then the leader of that party, so the leader of the Liberals, becomes the Prime Minister. And that Prime Minister then appoints cabinet ministers. Huzzah! Now, ideally, chooses really wisely. The Minister of Transportation hopefully knows something about transportation. Maybe they used to own a train company, or maybe they used to, I don't know, maybe they used to work in airports, or like in aeronautics or something. Like, they should have something. The Minister of Education. The Minister of Education maybe was once a teacher even. Minister of Health was maybe once director of some organization that worked with hospitals or in pharmacy, et cetera, et cetera. So ideally, these ministers know something. The Minister of Defense ideally has served some time in the military, or has at some point in their lives been attached to the military. So these are the cabinet ministers, and they're the ones who actually carry out the laws being made, but they're also themselves MPs, which means all the people on this page, all these people are also part of the legislative branch. All these people are also part of the legislative branch. Not so much the Queen and the Governor General, though, as you're going to find out, because the Governor General in the end has to sign the bills into law, technically he's part of making laws. So technically he too, or she, is also part of the legislative branch. But okay, lots of talking. Let's go on to that last branch of government. Last one, we have the judicial branch. Again, I said, key word here is like judge. They, if you don't remember, they are the ones who interpret the laws. So as the laws are made by the legislative branch, sometimes they need interpreting, or sometimes there'll be a conflict. So someone will say that you have, most recently during the pandemic, laws were made regarding travel, but that violates mobility rights. So they're the ones who interpret which laws are sometimes more important, which laws are being violated. So did the government violate mobility laws by creating a law telling you couldn't travel? They're the ones who decide where the laws, where the differences are, where those lines are. Now, they too are like a hierarchy. And at the very top of the judicial branch is the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is made up of 9 Supreme Court justices. And these 9 Supreme Court justices get their jobs by,
Nothing.
you guessed it, they are appointed by the Prime Minister. Seems like a lot of people are appointed by the Prime Minister. It's true. Now, just like senators, the Supreme Court are not elected. And so the idea is because they're appointed, they're not going to feel pressured or bullied by general opinion. So even though the majority of Canada feel like mask laws are endangering, mask laws are a violation of our mobility rights, well, the Supreme Court says otherwise. Supreme Court says that the government is allowed to do this because it's for the general safety of Canadians, and it doesn't violate any laws in a significant way that abuse it, blah, 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 blah. So they don't have to feel pressure by the majority of Canadians. No matter what the majority thinks, the Supreme Court is going to do what's best for Canada. At least that's the idea. They too serve until they're 75 years old or commit a capital crime, which I don't even know if that's ever happened, but they 75 years of age.
What does this symbol mean?
Which one, this one here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just a picture of, it looks like a demon. It's just a demon picture. That language is Japanese.
And what is it? What is it?
It's a drink made out of snakes. Yes. All right. So appointed by the Prime Minister. Okay, Supreme Court. So you have the Supreme Court there at the very top. Supreme Court doesn't see, like, they don't handle regular cases. They're the ones who, if you feel like you are being, your rights are being violated. So you're a woman and you feel like your job place is treating you differently because you're a woman. So you took some maternity leave, you took parental leave because you were pregnant. And in the end, they gave but you told them you were going to be back in 12 months. And then when you come back, they give somebody else the job that you feel you're more qualified for. And you think it's because that you're now a mother, or they think you're emotional, or they think you're not going to be able to put in the extra time that the new job will require because you now have a kid. So you might go to the Supreme Court, not right away, take some time to get there, but and I'll show you like some of the process, but you would go to the court system to demand that they recognize that your rights have been violated. So the Supreme Court tends to deal with rights violations. That's what they tend. They don't decide whether you actually killed a person or whether you actually stole that car. That is not them. There is only 9 of them, and they don't do a lot of cases every year, maybe like 15 cases a year, but it takes them a long time because they have to do a lot of research, and they are super wise, and they've been in the law a very long time. And generally speaking, our government, unlike America, our government has been very good at who they've put on it. It would appear that the prime ministers of our past have chosen justices based on their merits, not on whether they were liberal, lean conservative. Like when the conservatives were in power, the conservatives haven't always been in favor of gay marriage, but it doesn't appear like they put Supreme Court justices who opposed gay marriage. Or when the conservatives were in power, again, a number of conservative voters tend to be against abortion. Yet when Stephen Harper was in power, or when other conservative leaders were in power, they didn't put Supreme Court justices who were like anti-abortion necessarily. They put Supreme Court justices who knew the law, who would make a decision about abortion based on the law, not just because they had conservative feels. And the liberals don't necessarily choose Supreme Court justices who are like more left-leaning or whatever. We've actually been very lucky in Canada, and it hasn't become super politicized as it has in the States. So that's just an aside. Supreme Court. Underneath the Supreme Court, there are three different sections of the judicial system. One is your provincial side of it. One is the federal side of it. And this one, which we will not talk about because it's not part of our curriculum, is military courts. They have their own court that deal with, because you can get charged with a whole bunch of different stuff that a regular citizen wouldn't be. So we're just going to focus on these two. Under the federal system, there is first at the very top is the Federal Appeals Court. Federal Appeals Court. And under the provincial, there is the Provincial Appeals Court. They are the highest level of provincial or federal courts. Underneath them is just the regular federal court. And under this is the regular provincial courts. If you commit a crime within Alberta, you go to the Alberta Provincial Court. If you commit a crime that goes across border or deals with international crime somehow, or deals with, if you commit a crime about like shipping something illegal from China or Colombia or England, then if you're shipping things international that are illegal, that would be like under the federal court system. And if you did something in just the province you live in, that would be under the provincial court. Some people think like the federal is higher than the provincial. That's not the case. They're just different courts that deal with different subjects. So for example, people are like, oh, you committed murder. That's a really bad one. That's going to be under the federal court. No, as long as the murder happened in one province. If the murder happened in Alberta, but you dumped the body in Saskatchewan, then suddenly, yes, the federal courts may be involved because it's interprovincial. Though it might just make sense for one of the provinces to handle it, which has happened in the past. Under the provincial court, here, there is the smaller courts. This would be your traffic courts. What else? Family court. This would be family court for like divorce or child custody cases. Also like small claims court. So someone damaged your vehicle or vandalized your property and you are seeking damages against that person or that company, right? Amazon threw a package towards your door and it broke the window and the object, and Amazon is refusing to pay. And so you can take them to a small claims court for the $5,000 of damages, et cetera, et cetera. So, and that's at the bottom. That's down there. You'll notice that there is no municipal courts. There are no municipal courts. Calgary does not have its own court system. If you commit a bylaw violation, that would also be down here. This would be where you find like bylaw violations. Most bylaw violations don't go to court. Like your dog poops and you don't pick it up, and a police officer sees you and gives you a ticket and you refuse to pay the ticket, and then it escalates. I suppose it could go to like some kind of claims court. The government was going to claim damages against you for polluting the environment or like throwing cigarette butts out the window. I guess I actually don't have all the details on that, but bylaws would also fall under there. The point is that cities don't have their own court system. We are done the three branches of government, but we're not done the unit, because we have two more areas, things that have to be talked about. I'm sorry to say. So if you need a break, get a drink. We have another 10 minutes of notes.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Killian. I have 10 more minutes, okay, Killian?
Okay.
And then I'll be done. Okay. I want to go back to the legislative branch. If you remember, they're the ones who make laws. Well, how does the law actually get made? Let's talk about it. First of all, who writes the law? Who while having a drink at the local pub or in their basement while watching Netflix comes up with a brilliant idea for a new law about train safety or about banning trans fats or forbidding people to smoke near playgrounds or in public places? Who comes up with this? Well, it shouldn't, if you think about it, it shouldn't surprise you. The ones who write the most laws is the cabinet ministers, because cabinet ministers run the day-to-day business of government. So they're the ones who are looking at train safety. They're the ones who get all the reports. When a train accident happens, the person who gets the report is at the top, the Minister of Transportation. When trans fats are causing obesity amongst our children, it's the Minister of Health or Minister of Health or Minister of Childhood Development. I think there is a Minister of like children or a children's minister or something. They do children and seniors or something. So when trans fats are hurting our children and causing staggering rates of obesity, well, who gets those reports? At the end of the day, those reports are compiled and sent to the Minister of Health or the Minister of Children. And so these ministers are the ones who write the most laws, write the laws, or write the bills that are going to become law. They write the bills. Cabinet ministers are the ones by far who write the most bills. That's not to say that others can't. So any member of parliament and any senator can write a law. So if it's a member of parliament, so from the House of Commons, we put a C in front of it. So Bill C-34 means that it came from not cabinet. It came from the House of Commons. C stands for Commons. If it says S, Bill S3, that means it came from the Senate. Now, the Senate can't introduce laws that use taxes. So if they want to introduce a law about spending money on new highways, if they want to increase funding for women's rights.
What does spring taste like?
Cinnamon. It tastes like cinnamon. So if they want to create anything that costs money, they can't do it. But if they want to make a law that a certain day of the year is going to be Women's Rights Day or Women's Recognition Day, or they want to recognize the glory and efforts of our Canadian military, they can do that. They can't build a statue that takes taxpayer money, but if they want to recognize it somehow, they can do those things, but they can't spend any money. All right, that's, again, I'm not even sure if that's actually part of, if that's even part of our curriculum, but there you have it. So the minister writes the bill.
Dad, what does that say?
The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a novel, Killian. It's a very funny novel. Very funny novel. It is for adults. You wouldn't understand some of the humor. It's also English comedy, so you wouldn't understand some of the humor. Okay, they write the bills. Now, after they write the bill, what happens to it? Well, it goes to the House of Commons. It goes to the House of Commons, and it gets its first reading. In the first reading, all that happens is people read the bills. They read it, vote on
Or the law.
Its potential merit. So maybe in the first reading, maybe you don't like it. Maybe it's about lowering taxes on the extremely rich so that they can buy more yachts. It doesn't matter. But whatever the law that's being introduced, you don't feel like you like it. You're like, I don't know about lowering taxes on the rich. Why would we be lowering taxes on the rich? I don't really like this, but I'm just reading it for the first time. I need to do some research. Maybe there's something I'm missing here. So there's a vote, and it almost always passes. Like, always passes. There was once some member of parliament introduced something about searching for aliens who have already landed on our planet and are disguised as us, and it did not make it past first reading. But most laws make it past first reading. So MPs vote. MPs vote on its potential merit, and it usually always passes. Then individual MPs and staff do research. They do some research, which might include talking to their constituents. So maybe If I'm a member of parliament, I will go back to my constituency in Calgary. I'll leave Ottawa, go back to my constituency, say hi to my family, but also go door to door or have like a big town hall meeting and ask my constituents, what do you guys think of this new law? What do you guys think? How do you want, I'm your representative. How would you like me to vote? And we have conversations. Then there is the second reading. Second reading is a rather important reading because there's lots of debate, suggestions for edits, maybe suggestions that it just gets removed altogether, etc. So during this second reading, there's a lot of debate. And then there's a vote to move on, to move forward. Should we move forward with this bill, or is it toast? Is it trash? Okay, assuming it moves forward, it doesn't go to third reading. It actually goes to the committee stage. And in the committee stage, a committee is formed of relevant stakeholders. So if I'm making it about trans fats, banning trans fats, then I'm going to have a bunch of people from the health industry maybe in there. I'm also going to have MPs and senators and ministers who might be affected. So again, going back to our train safety one, I might have the minister, well, the Minister of Transportation would be in there, but maybe an MP from the area where the accident happened 10 years ago. So there's this huge accident that happened, and maybe we should bring the MP in where that accident happened, because they can speak to what their constituents felt like when they had to leave their homes and about the damage. But also there's an environmental concern. So let's have the Minister of the Environment, or at least maybe an MP who works closely with the Minister for the Environment, who like this, the sub-minister for the Environment, who can come in. We might also have relevant professionals who are in there. So health professionals, etc., nutrition people, if it's about trans fats, or you'll have engineers if it's about train safety, etc., etc. So this committee, relevant stakeholders, and they make edits. They make edits and changes. That's their job. They make edits and changes. That's it. After making a whole bunch of edits and changes, then that goes to not third reading. It goes to the report stage, where the committee reports on changes. There are reports on changes to MPs, to the House of Commons, which is actually often referred to as the HOC, the HOC. That is how it's referred to. So reports the changes to the House of Commons, and House of Commons suggest more changes. Some of them will still suggest it gets removed altogether, whatever the case. And if more changes are deemed necessary, then it goes back to the committee, which then sends back, after they make changes, goes back to the report, which then goes back to the committee, which then goes back to the report, then goes back to the committee, which then goes back to the report, back and forth, until during the report stage, they finally say, you know what? We don't care about any more changes. There's enough changes. We're not going to make any more, or maybe it's perfect now, whatever the case, it finally moves to third reading. Third reading, this is still in the House of Commons, and the MPs now vote. MPs vote. And they're pretty much now voting on its final copy. It's not going to change a lot anymore. This is it. If it gets past this vote, it's probably going to become law. There's a really good chance it's going to become law. So this vote matters. And in fact, governments have been taken down if they lose this vote. Because if you lose this vote, well, you should have known way back here somewhere. You should have known during second reading that people didn't like it. And you're still forcing it through. And now your own party is probably going to vote against it. Otherwise, why are you pushing it forward? But if you push it forward and it fails, it shows that you have very poor leadership and that you maybe shouldn't be the government anymore. And governments have been asked to step down because they lose this vote in the third reading. But again, most governments know that it's going to pass because all their MPs are going to vote for it. And if they have a majority government, that means it's going to pass no matter what. Or if they have a minority, like our current government in 2022, but the NDP are going to vote with the Liberals. They know that, so they're all going to vote in favor. There won't be a problem. And they know it's going to pass the third reading, and it does. Yay! So what happens after the third reading? It goes to the Senate. And the Senate, what does the Senate do? Does it all again. They do a first reading, a second reading, a committee stage, a report stage, a back and forth thingy with the committee and the report, and finally a third reading. So they do the exact same thing. Now, to be very clear, the Senate often changes nothing significant. For a couple reasons. One, it's already gone through so many stages, it's already as good as it's going to get for the most part. Number two, the Senate's not elected. They know they're not elected, and they kind of don't want to rock the boat because Canadians don't like it if these unelected people start telling us what to do and which laws we can have and which laws we can't have. The Senate tends to just trust the MPs and trust that, you know what, if majority of Canadians want this, it's probably okay. Sometimes they'll do some edits, like maybe they'll define certain things. So if you, again, back to our train example, if you're doing a train safety one, maybe the Senate will be like, it's not clear what a dangerous chemical is in the bill. So they flush out in committee stage, they flush out what a dangerous chemical actually means. And what a populated center doesn't mean it can't go past 5 houses. If there's a village of 5 houses, no chemicals can go anywhere near those 5 houses, or 5 houses kind of okay. That doesn't really count. Is it only towns? So only 1,000 people or more, only those count? Or is it only cities? Only 10,000 or more count? So they might do some definitions and stuff, but generally speaking, the Senate does very little, which is again why people don't like the Senate. They're like, why are we paying these people $120,000? Are they even doing anything? Well, because they cross some T's and dot some I's. Give me a break. We shouldn't be paying them this much money. So a lot of people don't like the Senate, but they do seem to serve a purpose on paper. Do they actually? Yeah, again, there's whole books written about this. Check the internet, Google it. Okay. So after the third reading in the Senate, where does it go? Well, if the Senate actually made changes, then it actually has to go, technically it goes back to the House of Commons. So the House of Commons kind of looks at it again and says, oh yeah, this is more or less the bill that we voted for in the third reading. We're fine with it. If the House of Commons actually don't like the changes the Senate made, then it actually has to go back to the Senate and then back to the House of Commons and back to the Senate. It has to do that a few times. But again, generally the House of Commons is like, yeah, these are the changes the Senate made are fine. And then after all of this, work, what happens? It goes in front of the Governor General, and the Governor General signs it into law. And Bill C-24 becomes, I don't know, the Train Safety Act. And that's its new name, the Train Safety Act. And that's its new law forever and ever. Bam. That is 95% of the unit. Congratulations for making it this far. Unfortunately, there is one small part of the grade 9 curriculum that isn't covered, but it's only going to take me 2 minutes. So just listen for 2 itty-bitty minutes more. Can you do that? 2 minutes. It is a group that we haven't talked about yet. And they're not part of the government. They're not part of the government, but it is part of this unit. And that is lobby groups. Lobby groups are people, often like advertisers and lawyers, people who are paid to pressure the government to make decisions / make laws decisions/laws in favor of their employer, whatever. So people who are paid to pressure the government to make decisions or laws in favor of their employer. So if I am the lobby group Greenpeace, Greenpeace gets paid by people, by companies, by regular citizens to pressure the government to make environmental laws. They, Smokers for America pressure the government to not make smoking laws. They pressure the government to, they're lawyers, Smokers for America. They get a whole bunch of lawyers together and they tell the government that this violates the freedom of individuals to make decisions for themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You'll have MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They want laws, strict laws against drinking and driving. I can't think of any other examples, but I'm pretty sure you get it. Lobby groups step in. I'm almost done. Oh, you bounced it up there. So lobby groups step in here. This is where you're going to find lobby groups after sort of the first reading. After the first reading, it's made public. The bill is made public, and lobby groups step in and they tell MPs. They say, "Hey, MPs, we'll give you $100,000 for your next election. We'll give you $100,000 for your next election if you, during the second reading, if you try to make some changes here, there, make some changes." And then the lobby group will step in during the committee stage and try to influence MPs to make decisions. They'll be like, hey, we have 100,000. I'm from Greenpeace, and we have 100,000 people who listen to us on a regular basis on YouTube. We'll make a YouTube video about your environmental efforts, and 100,000 people will see it. We'll even use a picture and your name if you can make this more environmentally friendly. So they try to influence MPs, not so much senators, because senators, they're going to keep their job no matter what. So they try to influence MPs specifically to move towards the direction of their employers. That's what lobby groups do. That's what they're paid to do. Okay. Whew. That was intense. Thank you for listening through that very long explanation of the unit. I hope that you got a lot out of it. Please go back, take any notes, rewatch any specific complex areas, and I'll see you on the flip side. Cheers.